Some of the most valuable gemstones ever discovered did not begin their stories in vaults, museums, or royal collections. They began in places no one thought were worth searching twice. A pile of discarded rock, an old drawer, a piece of jewelry assumed to be fake, and in one extraordinary case, material that had already passed through a mining operation and been rejected. What makes these stories remarkable is not simply what the stones were eventually worth, it is how close they came to remaining invisible. Because in gemology, the difference between worthless rock and extraordinary treasure can sometimes be nothing more than one person deciding to look again. These are 10 of those moments. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Number 10. Montana Sapphire, the blue pebbles gold miners weren't looking for. In the gravel beds of Montana, prospectors once searched for one thing above all else: gold. Every pan of sediment was judged by the same question: was there enough yellow metal to make the work worthwhile? Anything else was usually a distraction, and that is exactly how sapphire entered the story. During gold mining operations in Montana, small, unusually hard pebbles began appearing in the sluice boxes and concentrates. Some were pale. Others carried hints of blue, green, or gray beneath surfaces worn smooth by water. To an experienced gemologist, their durability and crystal character would have demanded attention. But many early prospectors were not gemologists. They were looking for gold. That distinction mattered. A rough sapphire rarely looks like the polished blue stone seen in fine jewelry. In nature, corundum may appear dull, cloudy, fractured, or coated with surface material. Water-worn crystals can resemble ordinary gravel, especially when their color is weak or hidden beneath the rough exterior. So while miners carefully watched for flakes of gold, another valuable mineral was passing through the same deposits: sapphire. Montana would eventually become one of the most important sapphire-producing regions in the United States, with deposits associated with places such as the Missouri River, Rock Creek, Dry Cottonwood Creek, and Yogo Gulch. The Yogo story is especially revealing. Blue stones collected from mining material were initially treated as curious byproducts rather than the primary treasure. Only after proper examination did their identity become clear. They were sapphires, many with naturally attractive color that required little or no heat treatment. That discovery changed the way the material was viewed. The stones had not changed. Their chemistry had not changed. Their hardness had not changed. Only the knowledge surrounding them had changed. And that is what makes Montana Sapphire an ideal place to begin this story. Valuable gemstones are not always ignored because they are rare. Sometimes they are ignored because everyone is searching for something else. A miner expecting gold may see only gravel. A gemologist may see corundum. And somewhere between those two perspectives, an ordinary-looking pebble can quietly cross the line between waste material and treasure. But in the next case, the gemstones were not merely overlooked. They were left behind in the waste itself. Number 9. Pyaung-Gaung. Peridot, the gems still hiding in the waste. High in the mountains near Mogok, Myanmar, there is a place where the most interesting part of a gemstone mine may not be the tunnel. It may be the waste pile outside. Pyaung-Gaung is known for producing exceptional peridot, stones with vivid yellowish green to rich olive green color, sometimes large enough to exceed 10 carats after entering the gem trade. The crystals occur within ultramafic rocks dominated by dunite, where geological forces created pockets capable of producing remarkably fine material. But mining is never perfectly efficient. Rock is drilled, broken, examined, sorted, and removed. Material judged unimportant is pushed aside, and occasionally something valuable goes with it. During a visit to the Pyaung-Gaung mining area, a delegation that included GIA researcher James Shigley documented villagers doing something revealing. They were searching through the mine's waste tailings for peridot. At first, that may sound like scavenging through material that had already been exhausted. Gemologically, it makes perfect sense. A rough peridot crystal does not always announce itself with the brilliant green seen in a finished stone. Part of a crystal may remain trapped inside host rock. Fractures, coatings, broken surfaces, and surrounding minerals can obscure its color. A piece that appears unimpressive during rapid sorting may reveal much more once the surrounding material is removed, and light can enter the crystal properly. And Pyaung-Gaung material can justify that second look. Peridot belongs to the olivine mineral group, and specimens from this region are known for distinctive green coloration and characteristic internal features, including the circular stress fractures gemologists often describe as lily pads. Yet none of those qualities matter if the crystal never makes it past the waste pile. That creates an unusual reversal. At most mines, valuable material is taken away while waste is left behind. Here people return to what was left behind because the sorting process may not have told the whole story. A pile of discarded rock therefore becomes something more than mining debris. It becomes a second opportunity. And around Mogok, that idea has an even deeper history. Because peridot was not the only gemstone people learned to search for after the miners had finished. In the next story, the stones hidden among discarded material were red and potentially far more coveted. They were rubies. Number 8, Mogok ruby, what the ruby mines missed. In Mogok, Myanmar, ruby mining has shaped the landscape for centuries. Entire hillsides have been excavated, washed, and sorted in search of one of the most coveted gemstones on Earth. Yet even in a place famous for rubies, the most valuable stone is not always found the first time. After miners remove ruby-bearing marble and process the material, enormous quantities of pale rock and gravel are left behind. To most observers, these piles look exhausted, the remains of ground that has already given up everything worth taking. But in Mogok, that assumption can be dangerously wrong. No sorting process is perfect. A small ruby can remain attached to marble. A fractured crystal may be dismissed because only a tiny red edge is visible. Mud, weathering, or surrounding minerals can hide color. And when thousands of pieces of rock must be examined quickly, even experienced workers can miss something. That created an extraordinary tradition. For generations, people have returned to the discarded material after mining operations moved on. Among the most recognizable are women traditionally known as kanas, who carefully search through tailings for gemstones the original recovery process failed to capture. Their work requires patience rather than heavy machinery. Stone after stone is examined. White marble is turned over. Tiny flashes of red are separated from ordinary fragments. And occasionally, the waste gives something back. The geology explains why the effort can be worthwhile. Many of Mogok's celebrated rubies formed in marble, where chromium entered corundum and produced the intense red coloration that made the region legendary. Fine stones can display remarkable fluorescence and saturated color, qualities that have made Mogok ruby a benchmark in the international gem trade. But none of that beauty is guaranteed to be obvious underground. Before cutting and polishing, a ruby may be irregular, fractured, partly enclosed in matrix, or small enough to disappear among thousands of pale stones. That makes the tailings of Mogok more than discarded rock. They are evidence of an uncomfortable truth about gemstone mining. Finding the deposit does not mean finding every gemstone inside it. Sometimes the earth hides the treasure. Sometimes people overlook it. And sometimes the mine itself has already thrown it away. But the next case reveals an even stranger possibility. The gemstones were known to be there. The miners wanted them, and still the machinery left almost half of them behind. Number 7, Russian demantoid, the garnets the machines left behind. In the Ural Mountains of Russia, miners once faced a problem that seems almost impossible in hindsight. They knew valuable green garnets were in the ground. They were actively mining for them. And still, a large portion escaped recovery. The gemstone was demantoid, one of the rarest and most prized varieties of andradite garnet. Unlike the deep red garnets most people recognize, fine demantoid can display an intense green color caused largely by chromium. Exceptional stones also show extraordinary fire, dispersing white light into flashes of spectral color with a brilliance that can rival diamond. By the late 19th century, Russian demantoid had already attracted enormous attention, particularly among European jewelers and the workshops associated with Fabergé. But extracting it efficiently was another matter. At certain Ural deposits, hydraulic mining methods were used to break apart gem-bearing gravels and wash the material through recovery systems. The process was powerful. It was also imperfect. Historical gemological reports indicate that recovery efficiency during some periods may have been only around 40 to 60%. That meant something remarkable. A significant quantity of high-quality demantoid rough was not carried away as treasure. It remained in the tailings. The failure was not necessarily caused by careless workers. Demantoid crystals can be small, irregular, fractured, or partially hidden among gravel and other minerals. Rapid mechanical separation works well only when the system can reliably distinguish valuable material from everything surrounding it. When it cannot, geology wins. And years later, local people began returning to those old dumps. They searched through material that had already been mined, processed, and officially rejected. Some of those discarded piles still contained gem-quality demantoid. This is also where one of demantoid's most famous internal features becomes important. Certain Russian stones contain delicate golden fibers that curve outward from a central point. Gemologists call them horsetail inclusions. In many gemstones, inclusions reduce desirability. In demantoid, the right horsetail can strengthen evidence of Russian origin and make the stone even more fascinating to collectors. So a crystal once lost by machinery could later become desirable partly because of something hidden inside it. And that changes the story again. The previous gemstones were missed because people were looking elsewhere, or because sorting was imperfect. Here the target was known. The mine wanted the gems. The machines simply failed to recover them all. But the next gemstone presented a different problem entirely. It was not too small. It was not hidden in gravel. It was rejected because its rough shape looked wrong. Number 6. Afghan emerald, the rough buyers once called waste. In the mountains of Afghanistan, an emerald does not always emerge from the rock looking like a treasure. Some crystals are long, narrow, broken, and so awkwardly shaped that for years, certain miners and buyers regarded them as little more than waste. That judgment turned out to be expensive. Afghanistan, particularly the Panjshir Valley, is known for producing emeralds with rich green color and exceptional transparency. But the value of rough emerald depends on far more than color alone. A buyer must study the crystal's clarity, internal fractures, color zoning, and perhaps most importantly, its shape. Because every rough crystal contains a problem. A cutter must somehow fit a finished gemstone inside it. Long, thin emerald crystals can make that extremely difficult. GIA has documented large quantities of this so-called pencil-shaped rough coming from Afghanistan. According to veteran emerald dealer Arthur Groom, some miners and buyers once considered this material waste because conventional cutting could recover very little usable stone from its narrow shape. But cutting technology changed the equation. Instead of trying to force a large traditional emerald cut from an unsuitable crystal, cutters learned to recover small faceted stones, known in the trade as melee, from material that might previously have been rejected. Groom reported that these finished stones could command roughly $500 to $1,500 per carat on average. Suddenly, the shape that had made the rough undesirable no longer made it worthless, and the numbers surrounding Afghan emerald rough can become astonishing. During one GIA documented demonstration, Groom examined a parcel weighing about 260 grams and estimated its minimum value at approximately $600,000. That parcel was not the same material previously discarded as waste, but it revealed something crucial about this market. A relatively small quantity of rough emerald can represent extraordinary value when color, clarity, crystal shape, and cutting potential align. There is another complication. Mining methods can fracture emerald crystals before anyone ever evaluates them. GIA reported that perfectly preserved rough may retain as much as 60% of its weight during cutting, while badly broken crystals may yield only 10 to 15%. So the difference between valuable, rough, and apparent waste may come down to millimeters in knowledge. The emerald did not suddenly become better. What changed was the ability to understand what could be recovered from it. And the next gemstone takes that problem even further, because it was cracked, heavily included, and sitting in the remains of an old mine. Yet hidden inside was a tsavorite far more impressive than its rough exterior suggested. 5. The 192-carat tsavorite. At first glance, the rough stone did not look promising. It was large, about 192 carats, but size alone means very little in gemology. The surface was heavily fractured. Dark inclusions interrupted the green. Cracks ran through the crystal in directions that could destroy a finished gemstone with a single wrong cut. And according to the account later documented by GIA, the rough had reportedly been recovered from tailings at the old Titus tsavorite mine in Tanzania. Material the mine had already left behind. To understand why anyone would bother cutting such a difficult stone, the color must be considered. Tsavorite is the intense green variety of grossular garnet, colored primarily by vanadium and sometimes chromium. Unlike emerald, tsavorite is generally not treated to improve its appearance. When nature produces strong saturation, good transparency, and enough clean material for faceting, the result can be extraordinary. But none of that guarantees success when looking at the rough. A cutter must make decisions before the beauty is visible. Every fracture represents danger. Every inclusion reduces the area available for a clean finished stone. And with a crystal this damaged, much of its impressive original weight was never going to survive. The challenge was not to preserve 192 carats. It was to discover whether anything exceptional was hiding inside them. The answer appeared only after careful cutting. From the fractured rough emerged an exceptional tsavorite weighing approximately 23.23 carats. Another finished stone weighed about 6.80 carats, along with several smaller gems. More than 160 carats of the original rough did not become the main finished stone. Yet what survived was far more important than what was lost. A crystal that could easily have been dismissed by appearance had contained a large, fine green gemstone within its most promising section. And this is where rough gem evaluation becomes almost counterintuitive. A beautiful exterior does not guarantee a beautiful gemstone, and an ugly exterior does not guarantee failure. The real value may occupy only a small pocket inside a fractured mass of material. Recognizing that pocket requires knowledge of crystal orientation, inclusions, fracture patterns, color distribution, and cutting yield. The tailings had already told one story. This material was finished. The cutter discovered another. But the next gemstone did not spend its forgotten years in a mine dump. It sat quietly inside a drawer for half a century, while almost no one realized that the small blue stone was worth a fortune. Number 4. The Forgotten Blue Diamond. 50 years in a drawer. For nearly half a century, the ring sat in a drawer in Scotland. No museum display, no guarded vault, no auction catalog. Just an old piece of jewelry whose owner was unsure whether it had any real value at all. That uncertainty is what makes the story so remarkable. The center stone was blue, but color alone proves very little. Blue glass, synthetic stones, treated diamonds, sapphires, and inexpensive costume jewelry can all create a similar impression to an untrained eye. Without proper testing, appearance can be deeply misleading, so the ring remained largely forgotten. Then it was finally shown to specialists. The stone measured 7.81 carats, and it was not ordinary. Gemological examination identified it as a natural, fancy, grayish-blue diamond. That single conclusion changed the entire meaning of the object. Natural blue diamonds are among the rarest colored diamonds on Earth. Their color is commonly associated with trace amounts of boron incorporated into the diamond crystal structure during formation deep within the mantle. Only tiny amounts are needed, but the geological conditions required to produce them are extraordinarily uncommon. That rarity helps explain why important blue diamonds can command enormous prices. When the Scottish ring was eventually offered through Christie's, it sold for nearly £2.6 million. The astonishing part is not simply the price, it is the contrast. For decades, the diamond had been physically unchanged. Its crystal structure remained the same. Its color remained the same. Its rarity remained the same. Only its identity had been misunderstood. That exposes one of the most dangerous assumptions in the world of gemstones. If something looks ordinary, it probably is. Professional gemology exists partly because that assumption fails. Experts examine optical properties, inclusions, fluorescence, spectroscopy, color origin, and other characteristics that the naked eye cannot reliably judge. A forgotten ring can therefore move from uncertainty to extraordinary significance without the stone itself changing at all. The discovery did not create the value, it revealed it. And the next story pushes that idea even further. Because the next diamond was not merely forgotten, it was purchased for about £10 at a car boot sale, and worn for years as if it were nothing more than costume jewelry. Number 3. The tenor diamond, the £10 stone everyone thought was fake. At a car boot sale in London, a woman bought a small collection of jewelry for about £10. Among the pieces was an old ring set with a large clear stone. It looked decorative. It looked slightly old-fashioned. And because of where it had been purchased and how little had been paid for it, the simplest explanation seemed obvious. Costume jewelry. For years, the ring was worn casually, without security, insurance, or any reason to suspect that the stone deserved professional attention. That assumption survived for decades. Then a jeweler looked more closely. The stone did not behave like glass. Its proportions were unusual by modern standards, but that was not necessarily a flaw. Older diamonds were often cut differently from the precision shapes seen today, with broader facets and proportions designed for candlelight rather than modern display cases. The ring was eventually examined properly. The result changed everything. The center stone was a natural diamond weighing 26.27 carats. GIA, graded at eye color, and VVS2 clarity. An extraordinary result for a stone that had spent years being treated as inexpensive costume jewelry. In 2017, Sotheby's offered the diamond at auction. It sold for £656,750. The transformation from a £10 purchase to a six-figure auction result sounds almost impossible, but the diamond itself had never transformed. The crucial change happened in the human mind. Psychologists describe a related phenomenon as anchoring. Once a value or expectation has been established, later judgments often remain influenced by that original reference point. A ring bought cheaply at a car boot sale is expected to be cheap. A stone surrounded by costume jewelry is expected to be costume jewelry. And once that story feels convincing, there may be little reason to question it. Gemology does not work that way. A professional does not ask where a stone was purchased before deciding what it is. Hardness, refractive behavior, inclusions, crystal characteristics, cutting style, and laboratory testing matter far more than the surroundings in which the object happens to appear. That is what makes the tenor diamond so powerful. It was not hidden underground. It was not buried inside waste rock. It was visible the entire time. The only thing concealing its value was expectation. And the next gemstone was even harder to recognize. It was enormous. It was dark. And according to one of the most famous accounts in gemstone history, it spent years near a back door before anyone understood that the black crystal was actually one of the world's most extraordinary star sapphires. Number 2, Black Star of Queensland, the sapphire by the back door. In 1938, a young boy named Roy Spencer was walking through the gem fields of Queensland, Australia, when he picked up a large dark crystal. It did not look blue, it did not sparkle, and it certainly did not resemble the brilliant sapphires displayed in fine jewelry. To the eye, it was simply a heavy black stone. Roy brought it home. His father, Harry Spencer, was an experienced miner, but even he apparently saw little reason to treat the crystal as something extraordinary. The stone was reportedly tossed near the back door of the family home. That alone would already make the story remarkable. But over time, an even more famous version emerged. According to some accounts, the enormous crystal was used as a doorstop for years. The exact details of that claim remain debated, so the safest historical interpretation is more restrained. The stone was certainly not recognized at first for what it would eventually become, and what it became was astonishing. The original rough crystal weighed approximately 1,156 carats. Years later, its true nature was reconsidered. The dark material was sapphire. More importantly, it contained the conditions necessary to display one of the most dramatic optical phenomena in gemology. Asterism. Certain sapphires contain microscopic needle-like inclusions, commonly associated with rutile, When the stone is cut as a cabochon and oriented correctly, those inclusions can reflect light in a way that produces a sharp, six-rayed star moving across the surface. But none of that beauty is obvious in an uncut black crystal. After cutting, the stone became the Black Star of Queensland, a 733-carat star sapphire. Its identity had been hidden not by mud or mine waste, but by appearance. That distinction matters. The crystal was enormous. It was sitting in plain sight. Yet size alone did not reveal its value, because the most important feature was locked inside the way light would interact with its internal structure after cutting. Before that moment, it was simply dark, heavy, and unimpressive. Afterward, it became one of the most famous star sapphires ever documented, and that makes the next story almost impossible to surpass. Because the final gemstone was not merely misunderstood. The material containing it had already been rejected by a mining operation. Then a child found it in the discarded rubble. Inside was a rough diamond weighing close to 890 carats. Number 1. The Incomparable / Golden Canary Diamond. By the time the stone was found, the mining operation had already made its decision. This material was waste. The earth had been excavated. The valuable material had supposedly been removed. What remained was discarded rubble, rock with no reason to be examined again. Then a young girl noticed something. Near the mining debris in what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, she picked up an unusually large yellowish crystal. It weighed close to 890 carats, and it was a diamond. That fact alone makes the discovery extraordinary. But the deeper irony is almost difficult to comprehend. One of the largest gem-quality diamond crystals ever recovered had survived the mining process only to end up in material that had effectively been rejected. The stone would later become known as the Incomparable diamond. Its rough shape presented cutters with an enormous challenge. Large diamonds are not automatically destined to become large polished gems. Every internal fracture, inclusion, color zone, and crystallographic direction can determine where a cut must be made. And one wrong decision can destroy millions of years of geological history in seconds. The rough was studied for years before cutting began. Eventually, it produced several polished diamonds, including a remarkable shield-shaped yellow diamond weighing 407.48 carats. Decades later, that stone was recut again. The result was the Golden Canary. At 303.10 carats, it became one of the largest polished diamonds of its kind, graded fancy deep brownish yellow and internally flawless. But the finished gemstone is only half the story. The more important moment happened before anyone knew its name, before the cutting plans, before the grading report, before collectors and auction houses understood what they were looking at. It was simply a rough crystal lying beside discarded mining material. And that brings every story in this countdown back to the same uncomfortable truth. A gemstone does not become rare when someone recognizes it. A sapphire ignored by a gold miner is still sapphire. A ruby left in tailings is still ruby. A diamond mistaken for costume jewelry is still diamond. And an 890-carat crystal in a waste pile is still extraordinary, even if nobody has realized it yet. The value was always there. The only thing missing was recognition. And in the world of gemstones, that may be the most expensive mistake of all. A gemstone does not become valuable when someone finally recognizes it. Its structure, rarity, color, and geological history were already there. What changes is the observer. That is what connects every story in this documentary. The difference between waste and treasure was often not the stone itself, but the knowledge required to understand it. And somewhere today, another remarkable crystal may already have been found, handled, dismissed, and left behind. The question is whether anyone will look at it twice.